Are the Cincinnati Reds showing us their best John Wick impersonation? Not yet, but they can soon.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr, and I am a lifelong Cincinnati Reds fan. Seriously, I get the baby pictures to prove it. And I've been hosting this podcast for now 6 seasons. I am also the channel manager for the Locked On MLB channel. Locked On Reds is, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Cincinnati Reds, every single day. And I want to make Locked On Reds accessible to you. We want to talk about Reds baseball all year long, talk about the big things going on in Reds country. We'll dive into some geeky numbers. I'll try to make sure that they make sense and put them into context. And we will also overreact to the daily motions of the MLB Ocean and the 162. Thank you for joining me here today because we've got a lot to get into, including a rule change that Major League Baseball is proposing that does not solve anything and creates a lot more problems than it solves. We're also going to, I also want you to level with me for a moment on a player and his performances. We'll get into that here in a few, but I want to start first with, are the Reds back? That's all coming up on today's episode that is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. All right, so are they doing it? Are the Reds doing their best John Wick? No, they aren't. Yet. They can be, though. They've got to get some work done. There's definitely some opportunities coming up, and they've gotten themselves into a great position. 4-game win streak, sweeping the Cardinals. They're 60-61. They're 8.5 back in Milwaukee. Still think that that's probably a pipe dream at this point. And they're still 4.5 back of the final wild card spot, the same spot they've been in since May. I mean, at least May. They haven't been 500. I mean, if they beat the Royals on Friday night, tonight, if they begin this series off with a win, like they love doing, they'll be back to 500 for the first time since May 3rd, when they were 16-16. It's been a while. But as much as they've languished, as much as they've frustrated us, as much as it has seemed as though their playoff hopes stand on the edge of a knife and they could fall off at any moment, they still maintain hope. And quite frankly, that's all we've wanted as Reds fans, is to just be hopeful of a team, to scoreboard watch. I was watching Milwaukee and the Dodgers earlier on Thursday. They had a 2:10 start time, Central Time Zone, gotta love it. But watching their day game, and just watching different things like that, how does it all play out? I know yesterday on the crossover podcast where we recapped the Cardinals series sweep, by the way, go check that out. Had a lot of fun with JD from Locked On Cardinals. But we were talking about the wild card prospects of both teams, of the Cardinals and the Reds, and how it really feels like it's the third wild card spot or bust. Like, I don't think the first 2 wild card spots are up for grabs. The NL West has a monopoly on that right now. It's whoever wins the NL West, and then the first and the second wildcard spots, it's all going to be NL West teams. The Dodgers, the Padres, and the Diamondbacks are just dominating right now. So you're looking at that final spot, which currently is held by the Braves. Can the Reds make it there? They've got an opportunity, and they've got a Royals team that's coming in, and you're looking at this Royals record, and you're like, boy, they are impressive. But there's one caveat to their win-loss record. They are 12-1 against the White Sox, i.e. they're done playing the White Sox for the season. They are literally a 500 ball club. They're 54-54 against everyone not named the White Sox. So yes, they're not bad, but they're not a juggernaut either. They've got Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt can really take over a game. So if you can kind of keep him at bay, then you really give yourself a chance. But they've got the Royals for 3, and then they've got 10 games against the Blue Jays, the Pirates, and the A's. And I hesitate to say that the Pirates are bad, but they've sure gone on a bad stretch. The Pirates are doing right now, in the month of August, what the Reds did in May. The Pirates are playing a bunch of teams out west, playing a bunch of NL West teams, and they're getting their butts kicked. They've lost 10 in a row. So what does that mean whenever the Reds go to face them in Pittsburgh next weekend? It'd be interesting to see, but the Reds really have a shot here. These next 13 games, could the Reds go 10-3? That feels like it's out of reach. But the way that they're playing right now, I think that's the level you got to get to right now. Okay, are the Reds back right now as of this moment, Friday, August 16th? No. But if they go 10-3 over the next 13 games, they are absolutely back. They might be in the wild card spot, and they might be contending with the Brewers, who at that point, after these 13 games, they play the Brewers for their final 4 games of the season. But that's where we're at right now. I'm not saying that the Reds have a good shot at getting back in this. I said on Monday, I felt like they needed a miracle. And maybe the miracle is beginning, but we certainly aren't there right now. They've shown signs of hope. There's signs of life everywhere. And that's been the frustrating thing about this team all season long, right? Like, that's where we've been so frustrated with this Red side. But the signs of life, I mean, they're everywhere with this team. So remember when they got swept in Washington and we were all like, oh boy, this really seems to be going south fast. Well, in the 21 games since that, they're 13-8. They have their best OPS as a team here in the month of August. And remember last year, August was really where they hit the fan, where it was really where they hit a wall, right? This young team that had been so fun through June and July, August came and everything stopped. Well, it seems as though the team this year is climbing, because if you go onto Baseball Reference, my favorite website in the world, and you look at their month-to-month statistics and things like that just for hitting, their OPS has gone up every single month, and now it's at its highest of the season so far. And you look at the fact that ever since the All-Star break, the Reds are actually slugging 30 points higher than they did before the All-Star break. They were at 396 before the All-Star break. Now as a team, they're slugging 426. And just a little bit of a side on this one, it's not like crazy good, but consider where the Reds were early on in the season with one-run ball games, how bad it was. Since the All-Star break, they played 5 one-run ball games, and they're 2-3. That's fine. That's just stay around, even when it comes to one-run ball games, and we might see this team actually make up the ground. Plus, consider this, the supporting cast in the lineup is starting to figure it out because, of course, Elly has been going crazy. He has an OPS since the All-Star break over 800, but so does TJ Friedl, Tyler Stevenson, and Jake Fraley. Jake Fraley really coming along nicely this second half of the season, but TJ Friedl has been a revelation. 5 homers since the All-Star break. He has really found the power stroke, and I love everything that he's brought to this game. But then you also consider this, 2 part-time players in Santiago Espinal and Stuart Fairchild are also over 800. Of course, Santiago Espinal is in his own category right now. He hasn't had as many at-bats as the everyday guys, but in 34 at-bats, he has an OPS of 1,100. That's insane. And then the pitching staff, they've just done what they've done all season long. They've stayed consistent. The Reds pitching staff since the All-Star break has a 3.9 ERA as a team, and their walks plus hits per innings pitched, their WHIP, which is basically a statistic that talks about base runners allowed per inning, 1.1. That's it. Just solid, good pitching. Plus, as a entire pitching staff, they have just over a strikeout per inning since the All-Star break. Oh, and back on the hitting side as well, all these different signs of life that the Reds have. Will Benson, since the All-Star break, think about this. His slash line, 242 batting average, 306 on base, 485 slugging. You don't love the on-base percentage. You would love to see that come up a lot more. But consider where he's been much of the season. A 242 batting average and a slugging percentage just south of 500. Maybe he's starting to figure it out. But back to the pitching side of things. I mean, Hunter Green obviously has been killing it, but Nick Martinez has as well. Nick Martinez, for my money, is probably the best pitcher on this team, not named Hunter Green. Think about that for a minute. 19 innings since the All-Star break, 5 games, 2 starts. He's allowed 1 earned run, 19 strikeouts to 1 walk as well. Absolutely phenomenal. And then one last guy too on the pitching side, a guy who's been a revelation, Tony Santillan. He's only allowed 2 earned runs. Both of them were solo home runs, by the way, in 9 games pitched since the All-Star break. 17 strikeouts to 2 walks. Now, he needs to keep the ball on the ground a little bit more. The ground ball rate's not great. But Tony Santillan, there's a reason that the Reds have been using him in more of the fireman role than they have Fernando Cruz, because he's been much better than Fernando Cruz. But they've been showing signs of life, and they've got a chance to get back into it with the schedule coming up these next 2 weeks. They've got to make it happen, though. They've got to do the work. I'm not saying that they're back unless they go 10-3 in these next 30. I'm not talking about 7-6. 7-6 isn't going to get you there. 8-5 might, and 9-4, but 10-3 is really where they need to be. That's going to be hard to do, but they've got a chance. They got a chance. You know, I'm going to need you to level with me on something here, because I think a lot of folks are missing the boat on this one specific player that we'll talk about coming up next. As summer winds down, we're going to want to take advantage of every moment of warm weather outside, but don't forget to stay hydrated. Liquid IV is the best way to do that. Trust me, the other day I was out on the golf course, had a nice little shot too, was able to chip it in from like 65 yards out. Don't worry, that was the save par. I'm not like good at golf or anything like that, but I stayed hydrated with Liquid IV, because all you do is you mix a packet of Liquid IV with your water, and you double the hydration and you double the taste as well. You've got great tastes like lemon lime and raspberry, and the summer flavor of popsicle firecracker that melds some citrus tastes with some berry tastes and brings it all together. You really enhance your water with Liquid IV. Go to liquidiv.com and use the promo code MLB to get 20% off your first order. Again, that's code MLB at liquidiv.com for 20% off your first order today. Stay hydrated the rest of the summer and all year long, really, with Liquid IV. Thank you for making Locked On Reds your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. Host Paul Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor and help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team, every single day. And speaking of every day, shout out to our everydayers out there for making us part of your day, talking some Reds baseball with you. I'm always happy to talk Reds baseball with you. Steve will be back with me next week. His schedule has been wonky these last couple of weeks, but everything is kind of evening out, and we should be seeing him back with me every single day coming up here next week. But for our everydayers, coming up on the next Locked On Reds podcast, we're going to break down this Royals series, and I'll get Steve's thoughts on these new rule changes that we're going to talk about here later on, because, and it's proposed that the Major League Baseball has not made the decision yet. I'm going to tell you why it's just so asinine. That's coming up here in just a few minutes, though. But for right now, I need you to level with me on something, because there's a player that we all know and we're seeing him perform, and he is a very important player to this franchise. And a lot of people seem to really be down on him for only a couple of reasons. But level with me here. What if I told you this guy, we're going to give you numbers, going to do blind resumes, blind comparisons. Get ready, we're doing both of them here in these next few minutes. But what if I told you this guy was a Red? His first full season, he has 5 wins above replacement, and we're not even done yet. We got 6 weeks left of baseball, a little bit over 6 weeks, and he already has 5 wins above replacement. His OPS plus, the statistic that Steve and I love to use when it comes to hitting, where it's kind of all-inclusive, with 100 being league average. This player has a 130 OPS plus. He's 30% better than league average at the plate. He gets on base just over 34% of the time, inching close to 35% of the time, but 346 on base, you got to love that. And his on-pace numbers, so in a 162-game season, this player would hit 29 home runs. If I'd have told you that in February and I said that guy is a Red, you'd be like, hallelujah, praise Jesus, let's go. Who is it? Well, it's Elly De La Cruz. And for some reason, people don't look at him as though he is this dude that is stepping into greatness. I mean, you can build a team around Elly De La Cruz. The other 29 Major League Baseball teams would probably cut off their left arm to get Elly De La Cruz right now. I mean, he is the guy when it comes to the reason for any optimism surrounding the Cincinnati Reds. You can literally anchor your team with him. That's who he is. He's been so fantastic this year because we talked about Elly De La Cruz coming into the season like, we saw flashes last year, but we see flashes from everybody. Like, he's got to do something else. He's got to take a step forward. He might be taking a leap forward. Forget about a step. We're talking about a big leap forward. I said 5 wins above replacement because that's the average between Fangraphs and Baseball Reference, because Fangraphs, he's at 5.7, and Baseball Reference, he's at 4.3. But he's pretty much a 5-win player right now. That is phenomenal. So why is it that people, not me, but people I talk to and people that talk about the Reds, love to fixate on what he does wrong? And by what he does wrong, I mean 2 things. When I talk to people about Elly De La Cruz, almost from jump, people either mention his errors or his strikeouts. And I'll show the blind resume thing again because consider all of the amazing things that he does at the plate. So anybody that's complaining about his strikeouts, consider that with his high strikeout total, he's done all of this. The strikeouts haven't hampered him at all. As much as people want to talk about strikeouts being a problem, they aren't for Elly De La Cruz. And then the other thing, the errors. I see that a lot. He makes too many errors. So many errors. His fielding percentage. Don't talk to me about fielding percentage. That is a dumb stat. Nobody uses it. But the errors. All right, whatever. I'll humor you on the errors for a minute. Let's do a blind comparison on errors. Player A, first full season, 119 games at shortstop, 24 errors. We're talking about Elly De La Cruz, so obviously that's Elly De La Cruz. Player B, in their second full season, 148 games at shortstop this player had, 29 errors they made. You know who I'm talking about here? Barry Larkin. Yeah. Hall of Famer. Current analyst for Bally Sports. Everybody's anointed next manager of the team. Most people's favorite Red. In his second, not his first, his second full season at shortstop, made 29 errors. I think things turned out all right for him. And in fact, that season, his second full season, he led the National League in wins above replacement. He had 7 WAR that season. So do you know how much errors mean? Nothing. I don't care about errors. And there's been a couple of times where a few of the errors have been a little bit detrimental. It's his first full season, man. You think he's not going to make mistakes? He's not perfect. And I never said he was perfect. But I'm saying he's taken a step into greatness. Consider what he has done and the company that he is entering. I looked this up because he's already got 5 WAR, which means it's going up, by the way. It's not stopping, and he's going to accumulate even more because it's a cumulative stat based on the performances that you give. I think he's only going to continue to, we're going to see more stolen bases, which, by the way, did you notice on my blind resume I didn't have stolen bases for you? I was trying to hold it just for a moment as to which player I was talking about. You probably figured I was talking about Elly because I love talking about Elly. But consider for a moment that his WAR is only going to go up. Let's talk about some of the all-time Reds greats and that 5 wins above replacement plateau, the 5 WAR plateau. Pete Rose, in his career, his 19 seasons as a Red, he had 8 seasons where he had 5 wins above replacement or more. 8 seasons. He didn't hit 5 WAR until his 3rd full season with the team. Frank Robinson, he had 10 years as a Red because they traded him because he was an old 30. But in his 10 seasons, 8 of those seasons, he had 5 or more wins above replacement. He got it in his first full season like Elly is doing right now. Johnny Bench played 17 years as a Red, 8 years with 5 or more WAR. Again, first full season, just like Elly. Barry Larkin played 19 years for the Reds. 8 of them, he had a 5 WAR. So you've got 4 guys right there, 8 seasons with 5 or more WAR. Barry, it took till his second full season. I mentioned, the whole error comparison and stuff like that. His second full season, he had 7 WAR. So that was his first time above 5. Joe Morgan, in his 8 seasons as a Red, 6 of them, he had 5 WAR. His first year as a Red, he had 5 WAR. A little bit special circumstances because he was already a developed player at that time. But even his first full season as an Astro, he had 5 or more WAR. So he was just that good. Even Joey Votto, 6 seasons of 5 or more WAR in his 17 years as a Red, took to his 3rd full season to get there. Vada Pinson, a guy that I believe is totally overlooked when it comes to like the Hall of Fame and stuff, should absolutely be in the Hall of Fame. But Vada Pinson, in 11 years as a Red, 5 of those he had, a WAR of 5 or more. His first full season as a Red, he got there as well. And Tony Perez, in his 16 seasons as a Red, 4 of them were 5 WAR. Consider that for a moment. Elly De La Cruz is joining the likes of Frank Robinson, Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, and Vada Pinson as players that have 5 or more WAR in their first full season as a Red. Why on earth are we not talking about him more? Why on earth are we not talking about him like he has got a chance to be one of the best players that we've ever seen? But we got Joe Schmo over here telling me about fielding percentage and Negative Nelly talking about his errors and Negative Nancy talking about his strikeouts. Stop. Level with me here. Elly is becoming one of the best players that we have ever seen. Enjoy it. And don't talk to me about when he becomes a free agent because that's like 5 years from now. I'm not worried about 5 years from now. I'm enjoying it right now. Enjoy it with me. Stop being negative about Elly. There's really nothing to be negative about. I'll tell you something to be negative about, though. Major League Baseball has proposed a rule change that will definitely create more problems than it solves. The best way to enhance your baseball watching experience the rest of the season is with PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. And they've got so many different ways to do it. There's a reason that they are the #1 daily fantasy sports app because you just pick 2 to 6 entries. An entry is your favorite player and your favorite stat, and all you do is click more or less. You do that 2 to 6 times, you create an entry, and in some cases, only 4 picks correctly can win you up to 100 times your money. You can turn $10 into $1,000 just like that. And all you need is to click more or less on stolen bases for Elly De La Cruz, on home runs for TJ Friedel, on strikeouts for Hunter Green. That's as easy as pie. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code, all lowercase, LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that's download the PrizePicks app and use the promo code all lowercase LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, all you got to do is click more or click less. It's really that easy. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds, and you can listen to the Reds wherever you are. Also, bookmark CincinnatiRedsTalk.com for written content about your Cincinnati Reds. A lot of great stuff over there. A lot of great things as the Reds are really starting to get going here that you can read about over at CincinnatiRedsTalk.com. All right, I saw an article on ESPN.com written by Jesse Rogers that was detailing a rule change proposal that Major League Baseball is kicking around the idea of. It would be a rule that mandates a starting pitcher must throw 6 innings. Now, there are concessions to this, but quite frankly, this idea is terrible. This idea solves nothing and actually creates more problems than it solves. Like I said, I got this info from an article at ESPN.com. Jesse Rogers, he does a great job covering Major League Baseball. Really, him and Jeff Passan are two of the most trustworthy dudes when it comes to national baseball news and coverage and things like that. But this rule is just redonkulous, dude. Like, okay, so 6 inning minimum for a starter. Number one, you get rid of openers. You get rid of the idea of a bullpen day, which I think we all would be fine with. Like, we don't love bullpen days. Although, honestly, I think the Reds have actually done pretty well in bullpen days this season. But the Reds have also been a pretty good starting pitching team overall as well. We're going to get into some numbers as to why the 6 inning minimum makes no sense, though. But Major League Baseball did concede. They're like, okay, it's not going to be a hard and fast. You got to throw 6 innings, period. Because think about some of the starts we've seen this season. Think about some of the Frankie Montas starts that the Reds saw this season where he was getting to like 40 pitches in the first inning. You're going to tell that guy he's got to throw 6 innings like that? Thankfully, no. There are a few concessions in this proposed rule change. Number one, if a pitcher allows 4 or more earned runs. Number two, if a pitcher throws 100 pitches before he gets to that 6th inning. And then number 3, if a pitcher is injured. But if the pitcher is removed from the start, he must then be put on the IL. So it's not something that's like, oh, well, he got the cramps, we're going to remove him. No, you have to put the starting pitcher on the IL if you remove him from the game early. All of this makes no sense. Consider the fact that in Major League Baseball this year, the average start is 5 1/3 innings. And the average number of pitches thrown in a game for the major leagues is 86. So consider that, okay, 86 pitches for 5 1/3 innings. So you're thinking, yeah, sure, you can go more. But that's not how the game works now. The biggest thing that Major League Baseball wants to combat with this, they said that this is what Major League Baseball said kind of prompted the idea. It says, quote, "We are interested in increasing the amount of action in the game, restoring the prominence of the starting pitcher, and reducing the prevalence of pitching injuries." So you're going to force them to throw more pitches. That's going to keep them healthier. I don't think so. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And consider the fact that the number of games per team, the average number of games with over 100 pitches for a given team is 16. That's league average. 16 games out of the, what are we at, 130? Whatever it is. Out of the games that the Reds have played, or the games that the average Major League team has played to this point in the season, only 16 times has their starting pitcher thrown more than 100 pitches. Now, the Reds are far above league average. They have had 33 games so far this season. They lead the league in 100-plus pitch starts. But that is a concession on this. And let's go to the concessions for this rule. So the 6-inning minimum. Like, 4 earned runs or more, or if you hit 100 pitches before the 6th inning, you're talking about a bad start, right? Like, if you're hitting 100 pitches and you're giving up more than 4 earned runs before the 6th inning, it's not a good start. So essentially the league is saying, if you have a quality start going, then the pitcher must stay in more. We would want that anyway. Why is this a mandate? Why is this something that the league has to mandate and make a rule about? And then the whole injured thing, like they have to go on the injured list, so this has to be something that they miss multiple starts for if you take them out of the game early? What if it is cramps? You're not going to put a pitcher on the IL for cramps, but you're also not going to force him to stay in the game with cramps, because then you are going to hurt him more and cause him to be on the IL for something much worse than cramps. I don't understand what Major League Baseball is trying to do here. They're looking for a solution without a question. Like the problem, and if you're, we'll go to what they said. One of the reasons that they proposed this rule, they want to restore the prominence of the starting pitcher. Well, part of that is every pitcher, whether you're a relief pitcher or a starting pitcher, every pitcher is being taught that maximum effort is the way. This is the way. Maximum effort. That is not a thing that the Reds are only teaching. We talked about this and we kind of begrudged this with a couple of different folks throughout the past year or so. And most recently our examples have been Graham Ashcraft, because it feels as though he cannot pitch unless he is giving maximum effort, which makes us believe that he would best be suited as a relief pitcher. But you are fundamentally changing how you teach pitching through every farm system in the major leagues to suffice this rule that does not exist, and you are proposing? That's so backwards to me. The game has evolved. And I get it that some people are probably thinking, man, I would love to see starters go longer. You must train them to go longer. They have to be able to locate a pitch at 75% effort or 80% effort. And they have to make it a competitive pitch. We've seen plenty of guys that can't do that. And so now you're telling them you have to do that. Not only are you reducing what your pitching prospect pool looks like, you're reducing your current major league staff as well. And maybe there is something I'm missing, and maybe I am looking at this just from surface level, and I'm only reacting to surface level stuff, but I do not know what sort of details you can give me about this rule change proposal that makes me like it. This rule change proposal would do no good for a starting pitcher. You're telling we think about some good 5-inning starts. There have been good 5-inning starts. That's how the game goes anymore. But you got a 5-inning start where they're allowing one run, but they got to, 95 pitches or something like that. They've allowed one run, maybe had 6, 7, 8 strikeouts in 5 innings, but they've gotten to 95 pitches. That's a pretty good day. You're going to go to the bullpen. But now with this rule, you can't. You got to bring the guy back out here, and he's going to easily hit 100 pitches before he finishes that 6th inning. Who knows what happens? I think that this fundamentally changes the game to a point that, number one, the Rays, who constantly utilize openers and bullpen days and things like that for strategic value, not just because they have to, but they strategically do this, you are now cutting out that strategy from their team. That makes no sense to me. This rule is dumb. And I digress. I would love to get Steve's opinion on this. I reckon we're probably going to talk about this a little bit more. And Major League Baseball did admit that if they ever wanted to implement a rule like this, it would have to be years out. It would be a runway of a couple of years, not something that they would just be like, yeah, by the way, you have to go 6 innings now. But that's because they would have to fundamentally change the way that they train pitchers in the minor leagues. That they should not do this. They should not consider this. They should trash this proposal right now. It's a horrible idea. But you know what's not a horrible idea? The Reds getting a win over the Royals this weekend. We're going to be recapping this Royals series coming up on Monday, so make sure that you join us. But that'll wrap up this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks as always for making us your first listen every single day. Hope to see you back on Monday. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, because you can prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description of today's episode, so you don't need to go searching for it. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day, and you can trust that we will be Locked On Reds every single day.